like something else. And you can see the affinity. But a metaphor is much more radical. It says something is something else. And so in that charge, which we use in daily life all the time, in all kinds of ways in our ordinary speech as well, in that interchange, the reason I think the reader gets involved is you go, there's an assertion, there's a claim, okay? My claim in my poem is, the heart is a pomegranate. That doesn't seem immediately obvious. So the question is, how far, let's push this a little further. Let's see if you can go a little further in this experiment in seeing whether the heart is convincing as a piece of fruit. And so you go, blistered with seeds. You're going just another step further in thinking through whether this is going to prove it to you or not, whether you're going to be convinced by this. And, you know, the extended metaphor is called a conceit, that where you just go further and further. Love, you know, John Donne says lovers are like stiff twin compasses. You think, how are they like stiff twin compasses? And they're going like this as they move, and you're either convinced by that or not. There is a point where all metaphors break down. The way I've tried to explain this to people who seem very skeptical about poetry, but, for example, who are religious, go, well, some people think that when you're eating the wafer and drinking the wine, you are tasting something like, and some people think you are taking the body of Christ into you. And I think everyone suddenly understands what you mean when you take the metaphors from religion, which are powerful. And so I think poetry, which is one of the sources of religion, operates this way. It's a form of metaphorical thinking. Now, how far you go with the metaphors are good or not, that's another question. But as a reader, you're participating in this because it's not obvious, it's not automatically obvious. You have to sort of figure out, it creates a community with you because you have an active role in figuring out, you may reject it, or you may accept it, or you may believe it. But, you know, when Shelley says a poet is a nightingale, you think, well, is a poet a nightingale? And then Shelley goes singing in darkness to unseen listeners. You go, that's interesting, because a poet is not a bird exactly, but the poet is singing in darkness to someone who might hear it later. That's an interesting metaphor, and it tells us something about poetry.
Your first book